Good morning, and welcome to the First University Church of Rochester, where our organ is still alive and well and sounding amazing this morning. Thank you. Also, welcome to First University Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the spirit and to serve our community. Whoever you are welcome here. Wherever you come from, you are welcome here. Whomever you love, you are welcome here. Whatever your experience is, in church and religion, you are welcome here. All of you are welcome here. It is good to be together this morning. We acknowledge with respect the dedication, keepers of the western door and cover the honey behind the pool on whose ancestral and present-day lands First Universalist now stands. This morning, we are worshiping in a new way. We are worshiping in a new way again. We are a community of seekers, both online and in person, and we are choosing to worship in person, vaccinated, and masked, social distance. This might be a good time to check on whether or not you have your mask on correctly, and whether or not you're maintaining a distance from others. If you're here for the first time this morning, we especially welcome you. If you are coming back, we especially welcome you. Thank you for making it to this worship community. And we have a visitor's form that can be found in the chat for folks online that can be found in the order of service for those who are here in person. Please fill out this form so we can offer you love beyond this worship service. Before we take a moment to turn to our neighbor, let's take a moment to turn towards our screen over this way here in the sanctuary to be able to offer a wave to our online worshiping community. We are so glad you are here with us. If you're online, please pop in the chat to offer a reading. And if you're actually in us, please take a moment to turn to our neighbor this morning and to offer a reading. Please go forward. So when please rise in body or spirit this morning, as you guys will sing together a hymn that is not in our hymnal. Look out, yeah, put those hymnals away, those who are getting prepared. Look out. This morning's opening hymn is actually a hymn out of the music, and it's chant. So we're going to be able to just learn it pretty quickly, I think, and go through it pretty quickly. In fact, we invite us to sing it in unison a couple times and then to go around, just so we can take advantage of being able to sing it around this morning. So the song goes like this, and our lyrics should be up on the screen in a second.
There goes, I guess it goes.
It's so good to be in a beautiful building again. As we would those who are joining us from near and far. Do you ever wonder what brings us here? Why we come, in person or virtually? What draws us away from other activities like snooze in the next hour or two? Or cuddling up with a good book, especially on Wednesday? I think we come from many different reasons, many of which we share in common. Let me tell you some, not some of the reasons that bring me here, and see if any of my reasons resonate with yours. I come because this is my refuge from an unfriendly and often hostile world. And being here restores my resolve to do better, to be better. I come because my spirit is nourished by the beauty of the music I hear. I come because this is my home, away from home. Not like a cheers where everybody knows your name, but more like a friendly family where one is always welcome. I come because this is a place where the words from the pulpit challenge me, force me to rethink some of my cherished opinions, and always, always give me food for thought. And I leave, recharged by the love that surrounds me here and encourages me to face another week of surprises, uncertainties, and challenges. And let me not overlook the fact that I come so that I can join with you in worshiping together. Will Sarah soon come over to that chance? As Sarah lights our chalice at First Universalist Church, and you light the chalice in your own homes, will you join me in saying our sacrifice in us? May we worship the Lord, together of heart, mind, spirit, and we shall serve God. And now please join me while you serve to recite our acclamation that follow our outside. Love is around the church. The Christ of is and service is prayer. Together peace. The sea offers and freedom. The serve and the people. The all souls. The souls that make God. Bless the mountains, recover and fall. This month's social justice offering will look back in the We have partnered with various Christian and other local organizations that help combat injustice services in some largest communities. To remind you, the Black Community Focus Fund is committed to eliminating the disparities brought about by systemic racism that impacts Black people and people of color in Rochester. Together, we work to accomplish racial equality in employment, policy, education, and economic revitalization. Please give this generously as you can. You are invited to bring your offering to the offering boxes in front and back of the sanctuary, before or after service, and during our offering. If you would like to go online, please scan the QR code if you are here in the sanctuary and click the link in the chat to give the First Universalist Church. You can also feel free to send a check to the church. Wow. Thank you, choir. Really, who wants it? Goodness, that was French, right? I thought so. I thought I read it. For our choir memory. Welcome to First Universal. So our choir not only sings English, but they sing multiple languages. Oh, Rob, the choir sounds beautiful this morning. And I have to ask you to come up and just join me up here at the pulpit. Dear ones, this morning is our last morning until late May, with Rob Cheswold with us in full capacity, his job as our music director. Starting this next week, Rob is actually going to be with us only one time per month as he works towards finishing his coursework for PhD in collaborative piano at Eastman School. Share a bit about this.
Sure. Yeah, this is a hard, this is an important because I love you all, and I love being here every week. And it turns out a full-time job, a part-time job, and the GMA is a lot to handle. So I'm really grateful for everyone understanding this little bit of time I need to just get one of those things off my plate. So I'm very excited to be close to the end of my degree. And this will just allow me to really be able to wrap that up as I need to do. And so I just appreciate all your flexibility and understanding. And I'm looking forward to still being here, like Reverend Lane said. And yeah, thank you so much for all your.
Because of where this brings to us, it's just honor the many gifts that Rock has brought into ministry, its true ministry as our music director. If you notice as towards the end of Rock's music ministry, that's when he begins to pause. And so I want to just invite us to pause for a moment, since I think it's really nice to make this transition with a bit of gratitude. I know that Rock wrestled with this decision a bit as to what he needed to do and whether or not he could actually step away from this position. And so I thought it would be nice for us to just consider for ourselves what are some of the things that we appreciate and are grateful for from Rock's music ministry with us over the last 3.5 years. 2 of which, more than half of which, has been online with us, which greatly shifted Rock's job in so many ways, both known and unknown. So, for folks who would, I'm just going to call into the space right now, into the space, and for folks online to put it in the chat, I'll keep my phone handy with me. It's actually over there. Just put that on. Just right there, just right there. Sorry. Just trying to keep track of that. If folks would put in the chat too, or people online, things that you're grateful for Rock's music ministry, just call it out. I'll try to keep that as much as I can there. I'll just remind anything what you're grateful for Rock's ministry. The pre-recorded sessions of music that Rock did for us over the last 2 years. So many pre-recordings that Rock had to get extra memory on his computer, and also had to get a new computer. So before the last 1 hour with us. Other pieces. It's leadership. Rock, you are so leader. Yes. Patience with our chit-chat in the choir. This is not a business as usual choir that you're just talking the whole time. Rock's like to put those on. Thank you, Rock.
As required,
His unbelievable talent and kindness. George Winston E. Posters. I don't even know what that means, but that's great. George Winston E. Posters. He played some of the things we haven't heard before, exposing us to new things. His sense of humor. His sincere personality. How he takes a familiar song and makes it different. I appreciate your collaboration, Rock. I appreciate your willingness to work with me and to keep on coming together around the table to create worship together. I so appreciate that. Is that we're not even coming to Rock's appearance. And yet there are 4 people in speeches. I want to get a quote right now that I think the Rock brings something particular to music ministry, which is his deep love for the people. Rock cares for this congregation. Rock cares for us. And Rock, that's rare. I'm not going to lie. I feel like there's a lot of folks in this field that are getting a little diva-y about what they're doing. And really, what I love about you is that you just care so deeply about this church. And that you're committed to the people that serve. And that your senior music ministry is serve. So thank you. And the feeling is mutual. The feeling is mutual. Yeah, Lisa Winter, bringing your voice into the room. He's with us online and giving us a praise of it online right now. Rock is one of the best music directors we've ever had. Yeah, I'm looking. Oh my gosh, should we sing me something personal? Oh, here's to Rock from Theo and Steve. Your gentle competence has brought the music at church to a new level. So much beauty and joy, thank you. And then also the ones that is waiting in faithfulness. I love Rock's gentleness and confidence. Rock, may you go with our blessing of gratitude. May you have space and capacity to finish your semester. We all appreciate you taking the time that you need, pay attention to what you can do and what you need to move away from. Please know that you have all of our love as you embark on this phase of your life journey, and please know we will be here in May to welcome you back to church, and we will look forward to seeing you on March 13th at April 17th, and leave us for Easter. Rock. Go with our blessings of love, appreciation, and gratitude for all that brought this community. We are excited to see what will come for you. Thank you. Why is church is better than ours? It's just, I just love the service. It's so thoughtful, and people can feel it online, as I'm sure you can, as I'm sure you share. So I want to invite you now into this round of time of sharing the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, wherever you are, whether you say share online, place a hand over your heart, to be able to listen from this heart-centered space, and also just to bring to mind all of those placing a hand over their heart this morning in many different locations. This heart reminding us that we are connected, we are grounded, and we are in spirit this morning. As Dolores places stones into a bowl, I will read aloud the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. All our inviters are to share joys and sorrows in the chat online, and we can hear from there. This morning, we have a joy from Marty Eggers. My grandson, Benjamin Baum, achieved an exceptional feat, sweeping the Section 5 finals for alpine racing by finishing first in both slalom and giant slalom races this past Tuesday. Best of all, he has been a role model for the younger seniors. One proud grandma. Sending you love, Marty Eggers, and to their grandson and family. We have a joy this morning from Donna Anderson, which is actually what we want to be forever. Our results came in, good news, all is negative. Continue to monitor on a yearly basis, celebrating with you, Donna, this morning. Woo-hoo. We have a joy this morning from Richard Reed, who received a surprise phone call on Friday night from Marie Sedoti. It was great to hear from her, and we talked for nearly an hour. She's doing well and sounds great. We also have a joy this morning from Lane-Mairead, whose partner was great, just landed a new job after an extensive search, and we are wishing very well and hoping that this is a good fit for Freddie and for his life. We share joy this morning from Becky Alwell. Thanks for all the love and support. I will be resting to restore my health. Conversations will come later. Becky, we have been thinking of you. Of course, this time. This morning, we also share a song from Rob Cheslin, our music director, as we join in holding all in care, holding all those who loved and knew Beth Howell, who is a student at the Senior Potsdam Training School of Music, who was killed near the campus on Friday night. The community is reeling and entering into a time of certainly healing and holding a lot. And so we'll also keep in our hearts the Senior Potsdam Training School of Music and also practice. So sorry to hear that. That's how it's been. Let us drop one stone into the bowl for all the joys. Share let's drop the stone into the bowl for all the sorrows. Out of the sorrows. So let us drop one final stone into the bowl to represent all the joys and sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. They all be helped in the heart of God. Today we light a white candle to acknowledge that we are a community affected by the grief, loss, fear, and hope of living through a pandemic. May these candles flame hold our experiences of this horrific disease in ways that has asked us to pivot and shift, to change plans and change methods. And may its light be every beacon of hope and a reminder that we are not. There was also time to time for prayer and meditation with each other. This morning's meditation was a love letter to silence. Silence is the end. Silence is sometimes we're a part of our lives. And it's something that we come here to join together collectively. So let us center ourselves, taking breath. Bring back into your chair or your seat. Just let the silence hold us for a moment. Stillness, quiet, growing softly, settling over each one of us. In the silence, we learn to listen. In the silence, we learn to be with ourselves. In the silence, we allow our thoughts to settle and flow, not catching or hanging on to any particular thought. In the silence, we notice. In the silence, we take stock of our lives. In the silence, we settle and center ourselves. Give thanks for moments of holy reflection. Gratitude for times when silence has helped us. In discernment in conversation and meditation by ourselves. Praise for the way silence can fill the space and our hearts. Appreciation for the silence between words and acquaintances. It speaks comfort. It speaks trust. It speaks volumes and stories without need to make a sound. In silence, we find ourselves and our liberations. In stillness, in the silence, let us hear. In the stillness, in the silence, let's find our essence. In the stillness, in the silence, let us find in our harmony. Let's embrace the stillness and silence together. As we were being seated, ministering together, getting friends. Our reading this morning comes from Lisa of Shelter in Faith. She has some images throughout this reading that invite us into a bit of a blind. If you feel so moved to prepare a conversation or online to go through some of the emotions, I'm just going to read the market or the sooner. You'd rather still hold on to it as an imaginative exercise so that we can all shelter in place. As we navigate the world that it is now, let us remember the trees. Let us root ourselves like babies, sitting separately, yes, but with our roots, our feet reaching down to the earth. Imagining roots stretching out from those feet until they meet and intertwine with our neighbors. Let's shelter each other like they do, reaching out branches up to the sky and stretching until we can sense, not touch, just sense our neighbors' branches, where they can start dancing together. We live in a globe, separate but connected, our roots entangled with each other, our feet firmly on the ground, our leaves whispering each other. We grow rooted in our communities, drawing wisdom up from the earth, this land, this home. We draw the wisdom of those who have tended this land or land, who knew the meaning of this place. We extend up to the sky, inviting the wisdom of those who live in the branches, wisdom of the feet and claws and feathers and fur of those who have lived and played here, who have found shelter and community here. All those past and present seen and hidden, who shelter in this place with us, who find shelter in this place with us. Let us tap into the wisdom of the trees during this time. Let us look deeply into the meaning of deep community and radical connection as we are seeing celebrated. Let us grow our connections so deep into the earth and so wide into the canopy that we know, like the trees, that we are not alone. We are never alone. Let us remember we are all sheltered and connected by the sky.
Greetings, First Universalist community. This is Reverend Lane coming to you live on Sunday afternoon. I heard wind during the service and also have received feedback after the service that folks who were a part of our Zoom worship this morning were not able to hear our service. I offer you all deep apologies. We were trying some new things with our audio, trying some new ways to mic some of the aspects of what we do in the service. And it sounds like the audio of the service got garbled in the process. I send certainly the guarantee that we will be working on this week and hoping to have better audio over Zoom next week, and hoping that those of you who plan to join us online will continue to join us online. I want to still offer you an opportunity to hear today's reading and to get to hear today's sermon. So here it is. Our reading this morning is Sheltered in Place by Lisa Nosel. And this reading involves a little bit of movement, can be done from your seat, can be done from anywhere. So I'll do some of the movements as we go through, and we'll invite you to do the same or to just listen. As we navigate the world as it is now, let us remember the trees. Let us root ourselves like they do. Sitting separately, yes, but with our roots, with our feet planted on the ground, reaching down into the earth and stretching out until they meet and intertwine with our neighbors. Let us shelter each other like they do, reaching our branches up to the sky and stretching out until we can sense, not touch, just sense our neighbors' branches, where they can start dancing together in the wind. We live in a grove, separate but connected, our roots entangled with each other, our leaves whispering with each other. We grow rooted in our communities, drawing wisdom up from the earth, from this land, from this home. We draw up the wisdom of those who have tended this land for millennia, who knew the meaning of this place. We extend up to the sky, inviting the wisdom of those who live in the branches, wisdom from the feet and claws and feathers and fur of those who have lived and played here, who have found shelter and community here. All those past and present, seen and unhidden, who shelter in this place with us, who find shelter in this place with us. Let us tap into the wisdom of the trees during this time. Let us live deeply into the meaning of deep community and radical connection, even as we are seemingly separated. Let us grow our connection so deep in the earth and so wide into the canopy that we know, like the trees, that we are not alone. We are never alone. Let us remember we are all sheltered and connected by the sky. Therein ends our reading. This morning, this afternoon, whenever you are watching this video, we are here to talk about the purpose of church. And I want to share some stories with you about churches that I've been a part of, churches that I've served in particular locations, in particular places. In a small urban congregation in New London, Connecticut, I learned who the church belongs to. I grew up in this beautiful old building in this church that had 3 layers. The building had 3 layers. It had a sanctuary up at the top, a community room on the middle level, and the 3rd level was the RE space in the basement. Many stories could be told about the structure of this building. However, I want to focus on that central community room. This is where I learned how to do church. This is where I learned how people socialized with one another. This is where I watched the adults and the children in coffee hour. This is where I watched our congregation prepare and serve meals to houseless folks who were coming to our church for a hot meal once a month. This is where I saw congregation members prepare those meals, sit down with folks to eat, clean up after the meals. And of course, on that 2nd floor, there was a church kitchen. Very similar to the church kitchen at First Universalist, kind of a ragtag set of appliances and some of the industrial pieces that are involved in the kitchen. In that church kitchen, I was in a gathering of folks in multiple age groups. I think it was something for RE, something for Sunday school, some justice project, something like that we were working on. And one of my friend's moms turned to me and said, who does the church belong to? And I, perhaps out of some future professional ambitions, said, the minister, of course. And she said, no, I think we were even in a ministerial transition at the time. She said, no, ministers come and go. The church belongs to us. The church belongs to all of us. This church is ours. It's what we make of it. This was an amazing small downtown church where I was exposed to so much more racially and class-wise in the population that lived there than the white bread suburb where I lived. This was the church where I got to go out while my dad was rehearsing in the choir before service and went to the corner store to get candy with a friend and learned a ton about who lived there and who worked there and got to see a different neighborhood. What I learned about church not only happened in the building, but it also happened out in the community. And what we were doing as a congregation, and also what I got to do as an individual. I got to listen to a lecture a couple of weeks ago from a fabulous professor of theology from Boston College, Professor Benjamin Valentine. And Dr. Valentine was talking about the theology of place. In particular, he's talking about the epistemic power of place. The ways that places act upon our psyches through different aspects of life and living, through the weather, through the people, through the landscape, histories, narratives, norms, natural features, cultural features, social features. He says we carry these places within us. Places shape our bodies and who we are. And it got me to thinking about this place, about being a church in downtown Rochester, being a congregation whose home base is, of course, on the corners of Clinton and Court Street in downtown Rochester. But also it got me thinking about the nature of church. Certainly the church building and the location shapes what we believe about the world. How we are in relationship with our community is an expression of our beliefs. And I'm not just talking about how we are in relationship in our whole city of Rochester, how we are in relationship in our community. In our community, in our church, is an expression of our beliefs. As our reading said this morning, we are shelter to one another. When I asked some of you about the purpose of church, one church member shared, I know I will always find there security, love, and acceptance. This is a place where we provide shelter to each other. I know I will always find there security, love, and acceptance. And yet, while affirming the shelter that we provide to one another, and of course how necessary that is in this time period, I also have seen times when shelter can grow too thick and insular. It can keep us solely to the people we know in this space right now. It can keep us only in those circles and in those pockets of people we know. I once served a congregation in a suburb in a Midwestern city. And this church was constructed and designed in the 1940s when the neighborhood that it was in was extremely conservative. This is Unitarian Universalism in the Bible Belt, right? So this church was built in a way as a fortress to protect the liberal people inside coming to worship and to be together from the conservative forces that surrounded them. It was kind of a strangely constructed building. You had to come in the building and then sort of go to the side and go down this like dark hallway in order to get to the sanctuary. Kind of hard to find one's way into. And when I served that congregation 80 years later, 80 years after its founding, the place still doesn't quite feel welcoming. Regularly, what I heard from people was, I come to church on Sunday and nobody greets me. Nobody says hello to me. There's a way that congregation felt too insular. Like the shelter we were providing to one another was only for the people who were already there. The shape of our buildings and the intent with which they were created influences the feel of a community. Dear ones, this morning I want to affirm the church is for a collective encounter with the sacred life force. For remembering that people encounter the sacred in different ways. For being reminded that each and every one of us is sacred. This morning, I want to encourage us to know the church cannot solely be about tending to each individual spiritual need. Certainly, our spiritual needs deserve to be met. But I also want us to break with the codependent notion that we can get all of our spiritual needs met in one place and with one group of people. Church is for a collective encounter with the sacred life force, for remembering that people encounter the sacred in different ways, for being reminded that for being reminded that each and every one of us is sacred. To quote another church member who reached out to me about the purpose of church, she wrote, "Community is so important to me. Church provides that for me, but I have learned through the years that one of the most important purposes for me has been to prod me to become a better version of myself. Church helps me to look in the mirror and to say to myself, am I acting with good intentions? Is this the kindest way I can handle this? And during the many times I fail at the above, church nudges me to own up to my errors by providing better examples that I can model." Beautiful and tender honesty and humility. And thinking through the theology of our location, of the church building in which this church is sometimes housed, we believe in truth seen through a mirror, as exhibited in the depiction of truth in the 4 women encircling our sanctuary. The woman who stands for truth is holding up a mirror in her hand. And yet she holds that mirror up to each of us as individuals. And she holds that mirror up to us as a collective. We are here to learn how to be truthful about who we are. We are here to become a better version of we. And yet, who is the we that comes to mind when you think of church? Who is the we that comes to mind when you think of church? Bell Hooks, expert truth teller, helps us to see a piece of the answer. She writes, I am often struck by the dangerous narcissism fostered by spiritual rhetoric that pays so much attention to individual self-improvement and so little to the practice of love within the context of community. Church, at its best, focuses on the latter, helps to keep our lives in balance with learning to love within the context of community. Church is about helping us to learn how to love together. Church, at its worst, feeds off of this rhetoric in terms of individual salvation, in terms of needing people to agree with your beliefs, to think like you, masquerading as love. In the ways we can focus on stories of individuals as the true hero, rather than seeing all who supported and poured into those individuals. Creating expectations none of us can live up to and generating belief out of shame at all we cannot live into, which our universalist ancestors gnash their teeth and roll in their graves at. Dear ones, the purpose of church is to help us discern how to live fulfilling lives, how to recognize and embrace truth, how to live into what we believe collectively. We are here, many of us worshiping together in a variety of ways from many places. What is our theology of place now as a church? And how has the where of who we are influenced the identity of who we are? This church is both a building in downtown Rochester and in locations across Rochester into parts of Canada with us as we travel to many places with us in our homes. There is a power in this expanded sense of place. It has influence on our shared purpose. The purpose of church is to seek a place and a role in a larger community context that in our case nurtures the spirit and serves the community, that expands who we are to embrace a larger, more inclusive love than any one of us can tap into alone. We are doing this work, and we have been doing this work resiliently, I might add, through so much. As we continue forward, these are my wishes for us. May this be a place where all feel welcome, and where we know a love so expansive, it helps us individually grow alongside one another, while also growing and expanding as a community. May we claim the ways our location influences what we believe and who we are. And may we continue to nurture the spirit and to serve the community. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so.
So once we have the time to pause the service, we will join in our closing hymn, Hymn 1020, the fire of the covenant. We know that as a community moving forward, it will take all of us. So let us join in this lively and joyful hymn. Please rise and bow to the Spirit, sing the fire. As we distinguish our college students, let's read together the words appreciated in the order of service. We distinguish this one. Loving is always with its message of love and justice. Taking outside these walls to pray. As we close our service this morning, I invite you to place a hand on your heart and just take a look around. Take a look around. Everyone who's here with us this morning. Take a look at the rest of those who are here. I want us to come here to encounter the sacred with these fabulous and fantastic souls. May you, as we be strengthened by them, be strengthened by this gathering, be sure out and be ahead first. And you go forth from this place knowing that you are loved, knowing that we are loved, and that God and we have loved. Amen. Blessed be the name.